Hola, bienvenidos. El día de hoy tenemos una entrevista con el señor Richard Schwartz, que es el creador de la terapia IFS. Richard Schwartz es un psicoterapeuta contemporáneo que fundó el modelo de los sistemas de la familia interna hace 40 años. Y hace apenas 20 años fundó su instituto de self-leadership, se llamaba antes, y ahora se llama el Instituto IFS o IFS Institute en inglés. Y pues están expandiéndose por todo el mundo y pues pronto nos van a traer nuestros entrenamientos a la comunidad hispana, lo cual me tiene muy emocionada porque como les he contado, IFS ha sido algo que ha cambiado mi práctica como terapeuta y mi vida personal, entonces estoy muy contenta de expandir este modelo al mundo para que todos podamos beneficiarnos de él. Y pues el señor Schwartz desarrolló IFS en un esfuerzo por ayudar a sus pacientes a curarse a sí mismos. Y nosotros como terapeutas ahora les enseñamos a los pacientes a curarse a ellos mismos. Y este modelo no patologiza, sino que se basa en la compasión, la confianza, la honestidad y la motivación del cliente a hacer sus cambios. Y a la vez reconoce las fortalezas y debilidades de ellos y cómo influyen en sus emociones. Y pues con esto le doy la bienvenida al señor Richard Schwartz. Welcome, Dick. It's such an honor to have you here with me. As I said in my introduction, you are the creator of IFS, and it's funny because my 10-year-old this morning heard that I was going to interview you, and he said, as I left, so you're going to interview your boss today? And I thought, yeah, he's the closest I have to a boss because I'm in private practice and I do IFS a lot. So,
well, I'm so glad you're in the community, Analia, and I love your commitment to bringing it to Spanish populations, Latinx populations.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thrilled to do this with you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have many questions that we're gonna go all over the place, if that's okay with you. And so I will start by asking you, which countries so far have you trained people in IFS? Where is IFS already popular?
Wow, that's a lot. So it's all through Europe. So I would say maybe we have trainings in maybe 6 European countries. So England has a big training program, and France, and Germany, and Portugal, and Spain, and probably 3 or 4 others. And now we're in Korea, and in Russia, and can't remember. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
But
it's okay.
There's a lot. Yeah, but we have yet to be in Latin America. So, yeah, that's partly why I'm excited about this.
Mm-hmm. So that leads me to my next question. What are your plans for expanding to Latin America, and when can we expect to have trainings in Latin America?
Yeah, I'm not aware of real solid plans. As I told you, I did a workshop maybe 2 weeks ago with a group in Mexico City that sponsored it, but they were people from all over Latin America. I think there were 12 different countries represented. So, and they were talking about maybe sponsoring a training, and there's another guy in Mexico who wants to do that. So part of our struggle now, it's a good problem to have, is we have enormous demand, and we need more infrastructure, we need more foundation. So we're trying to balance all that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm eager to start PAing or ATing or teaching over there. So I'm looking forward to that. I know that your model has gained a lot of credibility among therapists and even our contemporary masters like you, like Van der Kolk and Dan Siegel and Rick Doblin. They all recommend your model. What has made this model so popular and so searched for in the therapeutic community?
It's hard to pinpoint a reason recently. I mean, I've been at this for 40 years, and there were many dry years where I'd be begging people to come to trainings. So it's unclear why all of a sudden it's exploded this way. And I think some of it has to do with the endorsement of some of those people that you mentioned. And, maybe 5 years ago, hired somebody for social media, and I think that has helped a lot. And I think some of it is just, everything's got its time. If you wait long enough, then it's gonna be popular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In my IFS trainings, I met physicians, lawyers, teachers, and so many people from other professions that is not therapists. Why do you think other people from other professions are also seeking this kind of training?
Yeah, I think part of it is some of them were clients in IFS, and from doing that, they got the vision of what's possible in terms of their work. And also, increasingly, I've been trying to bring it out of psychotherapy alone, only psychotherapy, and bring it to these other arenas where people won't become therapists, but there are many elements of IFS that can be very useful in their work, like in coaching and in medicine and education. And so we have initiatives to try and bring it to a lot of other areas now, and people hear about it.
Mm-hmm. Fun. They bring a lot of richness to the conversations.
They do.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the IFS model. In the IFS model, you leave a lot of room for therapists' creativity, intuition, curiosity, while at the same time there are steps, there's a protocol to follow, which I love. And as the creator of this model, how do you feel about people using it so creatively? And how do you make sure therapists still stay within the lines of what's called an IFS therapy?
Yeah, so that's been a challenge. It's an interesting thing you bring up, because there can be a lot of creativity, and especially if the therapist accesses their self, because self in general knows how to heal, and self can be one of the C words is creativity. So how that was the balance, is allowing people to improvise and use their intuition while at the same time using the protocol, because there are elements that if you move away from the protocol, parts will take advantage of that, or parts will feel very offended. And so you're right, it's been a challenge. And I feel like in the trainings now, and you can tell me if you agree, we've done pretty well with that, with giving the framework, but saying, just make sure you're in self when you leave the framework.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what you say brought me to my next question, which is, in IFS, the center of the model is the self. And the self is a concept that for many is mysterious or woo-woo. How do you help people within our modern societies with secular beliefs or with atheist beliefs to believe and trust that self energy exists and that they can access it.
That's been a big challenge too, because so many models say the opposite. You know, in graduate school, if you're a therapist, you learn attachment theory, and you learn that unless you had a certain kind of good parenting at a critical period in your childhood, you shouldn't have any of that until you get it from some other person, that it has to come into you from outside. And I was finding it in people who had horrible childhoods. There was no way to make sense of how they could show up with these qualities given their histories. So because of that, that's probably the most skeptical aspect of IFS for most therapists. And I've had lots of debates with high-level trauma therapists and leaders of different schools about this issue. And what I say is that I'm an empiricist. I come from a very scientific family, and if they do what if they get parts to separate, they'll see the same that pops out. It's an empirical observation. It doesn't have to be theoretical. And so if they're willing to try it, they'll find the same thing that I found. And I didn't believe it for a long time. I had to be over and over, run into it and see it, and see that it was the same in everybody, and that it knew how to heal. So, yeah, woo-woo, it's too bad that is the way people see it sometimes, because as I was running into this and couldn't ground it in psychological theories, I started to look at spiritual traditions, and virtually every religion has a word for this and has meditative practices for accessing it. And so you don't even have to stay in the field of psychotherapy to run into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to convince.
Yeah.
I guess a part of me wants to convince.
Yeah, I mean, my main theme is just try it. You'll find the same person that I've been talking about is in there, and you won't find it if you don't try it. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. In Latin America, we have a long-standing traditions of native shamanic cultures working in healing capacities. And I know that your model has already attracted shamanic practitioners from the US and from other countries. And why do you think this overlap or this connection is happening when they find the model?
Yeah, I think that I stumbled onto a way to access that same world that shamans go into in a very simple way, by just having somebody focus on a part and begin to let the part take them into this other world. And I didn't know anything about shamanism when I started, but there was a point, particularly a woman named Michi Rose was a student who was also studying shamanism, and she started to say, this is very similar. And so I began to explore a little bit, and indeed, I do think it's the same world, and it is an alternate reality. It's all very real. And we encounter some similar phenomena. Now, the shamanic traditions that I studied or looked at didn't have a concept for self necessarily, and they relied a lot on what were called guides or power animals or things like that to do a lot of the healing. So I think that's one difference. But I feel like I just stumbled into this world that they've known about for centuries.
Mm-hmm. Yes. There is a big movement inside and outside the US to decolonize our cultures. Mm-hmm. And have you thought how we can bring this model to other countries in a way that is neither colonizing or appropriating native practices?
I think IFS is inherently anti-oppressive. It's anti-oppression model. I just recently did a workshop with a woman named Duran Young on the legacy burdens around anti-black racism that permeate our culture, and it was multi-racial group, and so we, you know, we did a lot of liberating of people's parts from these oppressive burdens that have come down through the centuries in different cultures. And you know, in a lot of those cases, it was around slavery and the pain of all that. But I do believe that self is automatically anti-oppression. Those C words lead you to want to act against injustice of any kind. So it's naturally decolonizing, both internally and externally, because internally, self goes to the exiles and brings them home and loves them and gives them a place around the table, and does the same with exiled people in the outside world, colonized people. So, does that make sense?
That part is very interesting to me, the being an activist and a fighter against colonization, for example, while being in self, right? Because self seems like peaceful and calm.
No. So 3 of those 8 C's are courage, confidence, and clarity. And so I'm working with a lot of very high-level social activists now, and working with them to do their activism from self, because self can be very forceful. It isn't just calm and peaceful and compassionate. It can be very courageous and stand up to injustice and give you a voice, that give your parts a voice. And that's a misconception, a common misconception about self. And so a lot of times these activist parts will say, no, I have to do it because the self you're talking about is so kind of wimpy. But it's just not true. Yeah.
Self is powerful.
Self is very powerful, and also isn't judgmental. So if you do your activism from this non-judgmental, forceful place, you can also do it with compassion, because you see the exiles of the opponent that are driving your opponent's extremes, but you also know you have to stand up to those extremes. So the person doesn't feel judged in the way they do when you lead from these activist parts that are very judgmental. So.
Cool. Imagine a world led by self.
Yeah, that's the vision. I'm glad you hold that vision as well.
I do. I hope I get to see it in my lifetime.
Me too. You've got a few more years than me, so.
Yeah. Maybe my son will see it.
Yeah.
In Latin America, there's still a lot of stigma when it comes to therapy and mental health, especially among men. How do you think we can reach people who think that therapy is only for crazy people, or that it's not for them?
Yeah, I'm not sure. You know, as I said, we've been working a lot more with the Black community and people of color, and similar in those communities as well. And also, I think, and I don't know if this is true in Latin America, but a lot of those communities associate therapy with establishment and with people having the leisure and the money to spend time that way. And and so my approach in almost every place that I go that has resistance isn't to try and convince anybody to do it, other than in a workshop to try and exercise. And in the exercise, I'll have them maybe go to a protector and start to interview it in the way we do. And people, even people with a lot of resistance, will pop out of that and say, this is pretty interesting. So my whole approach has mainly been just try it and see. And if it feels bogus, then don't do it. But don't do that without trying it. So.
Thank you. There is a big wave of psychedelic therapy gaining traction. And I can personally tell you of my experience in Peru. I had an ayahuasca ceremony, well, a few, and my knowledge of IFS was so helpful before, during, and after. I don't know how I could have done it with IFS, to tell you the truth. And so I found that was very helpful. And I know that even MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, adopted your model, IFS, as one of their protocols for their research. Why do you think psychedelic medicine and IFS go so well together?
Yeah, I've put a lot of thought into that, and I haven't tried ayahuasca, but I've tried ketamine and MDMA and psilocybin. And for whatever reason, it seems like each of those very quickly accesses different elements of self. And for whatever reason, helps protectors relax and open space very quickly. And in the MDMA research, Michael Mithofer, who spearheaded all of that, is an IFS therapist. And in the early phases of the research, he would keep track of how many people would spontaneously begin working with their parts without any cueing from him, because their protocol was, you're not supposed to have a particular kind of therapy, you're just supposed to be present. But people would say, I see, I've got my anger and I've locked it in a cage and I shouldn't have done that, and I'm going to let it out now and I'm going to get to know it. I've got video of that, just spontaneously doing that. And he found over 70% would spontaneously start doing IFS. So that was very validating, because it felt like I had just stumbled onto a way we all know as human beings to heal ourselves if we access enough self. And so ketamine takes you out of your body and takes you pretty far into that C-word connectedness, where you feel connected to everything, and you don't feel like you have boundaries. You just feel in this non-dual state of connectedness. And then when you come back into your body, you have a lot more self, and your body is embodied. And the times I did it, I was really able to work with my parts once I came back in a very facile way. And I had a great guide, a guy named Bob Grant in San Francisco, who could, help me work with my parts then. And so on. I could say something similar about psilocybin, and we have a project now with IFS and psilocybin and end-of-life patients at the University of Nebraska. A woman named Lou Lucas is doing a whole research piece on that in conjunction with the Johns Hopkins group. So I'm very, very excited about the future of IFS and psychedelics, and we're actually starting to form a training program, a special level 1 training for people who do psychedelic work. I would love for it to become the map to that territory. It's basically what I'm saying. It's starting to be. Because as you found, it's just very helpful to have it, to be able to navigate all these crazy things that are happening.
Totally. Totally, to manage the fearful parts, to manage especially the scared parts. That's where I found it the most useful, because some things show up that are so scary, and I could easily understand why so many people get taken over by those scared parts and have a bad trip.
That's right.
So to be able to separate from them and to stay in the experience, I think it was the game changer for me.
And that is the danger. Without IFS, there will be more and more bad trips, and then they'll get a bad name again, like they did however many years ago, and then it'll be more and more restricted. So that's part of my crusade, is to help both the subject and also the facilitator have that perspective that, no, this isn't a panic attack. It's just a little exile that's come out because the door was open, and we just need to comfort it. So, yeah.
Like the exile of the fear of death, which is common, right? Like death shows up.
Right. Exactly.
And that is scary for many. Yeah. Great. Oh, how exciting. See, before I enter the IFS world, I was in the MAPS world. I was training to be a psychedelic therapist.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I trained with Michael and then I moved schools. I was like, I think I'll stay in IFS. I'm still in the track of their training. But it's been 5 or 6 years since I started.
Oh, nice.
And I thought, it's going to be legal in so long. Like, why even bother?
Yeah.
And now it's almost here. So.
Almost here. Well, when we do that level 1, we should get you involved.
Yeah, I would love to. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, just remind me.
Okay. There are a lot of people talking about IFS on the web and podcasts, YouTube videos. Even me, as you know, I'm making my IFS intro training in Spanish right now. And something I wonder is, how can people that are new to the community of IFS can recognize or choose where to spend their time and money in a training that is legitimate, as opposed to someone that read a book and is putting a training out because they just feel like it.
Yeah, well, that's become a big issue now, and we actually have a committee. We call it the Integrity Committee, that's trying to figure out, we don't want to get into a big policing thing and sue people. So we're looking more toward certifying programs, and where people would apply and we would give them badges like this is approved by IFSI and so on, like yours would be. That feels like the only thing we can do at this point. But it is a big problem because it's gotten so popular and there's so much demand, and we can't fill the demand. So there's so many people dying to learn it, and then all these other people can come in and say, learn it from me. So that's how we're trying to handle it.
Very good. Yeah, in doing my research for my IFS intro, I found so many websites, even with my YouTube video, like on their page, and I'm like, what? Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit, what's the difference between an IFS intro class, like the one I'm making, and a level 1 training?
Yeah, in an intro class, most of the time, you get introduced to the concepts and maybe do some exercises to taste them, and maybe watch some video. But the trainings, even though it's very expensive to run them because we have a 3-to-1 ratio between students and what are called PAs, assistants, program assistants, we really value sort of direct mentoring while people are trying to do it, and also that people directly experience it as a client in the trainings, so they have a personal sense of it. And so that's the big difference, is the spot, the monitored teaching that happens in that context, as you experienced. So, and we do, in like yours, there's an intro, and I'm so glad you're doing it. And then we also have this online circle program. It's more like that. It's an introduction with a lot of video and so on.
Yeah, those are fun. I can't wait to do one in Spanish too.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So last one, última. In the Spanish-speaking communities, I know that we are dealing with a lot of trauma, anxiety, depression, addiction, violence. And then you add that aversion and the lack of access to therapy that we have in some of our countries. So the need is so great. And I have seen in my IFS practice that a healing can happen fast a lot of the times, and it's giving me a lot of hope that we can reach out to a lot of people and heal them and teach them to heal themselves and others.
That's right.
Yeah, so in closing this, Dick, do you have any message to the Latin American and Spanish-speaking community to welcome them to learn about IFS and to encourage them to use your model?
Yeah, what I would say is, I'm so grateful to you for bringing it, and very, very excited by the potential. And we are working on also ways to bring it directly to the public, so that you don't even necessarily have to work with a therapist. There'll be times where you'll get stuck, and it'd be nice to have a therapist to help you. And I'm hoping that could all be translated into Spanish also. But that's another of my big projects coming up, is how can we bring this in a very safe way? Because working with exiles can be kind of tricky. So I can't work with my own exiles that well. It helps to have somebody help you, but protectors, fine. Most people can do that on their own. So that's, I'm looking forward to that project, and finally clearing out some space to start to work on it. And sort of support group kind of work also, almost like AA or something like that, to have groups with maybe a volunteer leader, and would be free. And so, all of that is part of the bigger vision of projects. And like you said, it may not happen in my lifetime, but we're doing what we can. And I think particularly for people in at least formerly oppressed countries, formerly colonized countries, and currently colonized countries, it is a therapy of liberation. And so I do want to bring it directly to the people.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dick, for talking with us and for telling us your vision to bring the model to the Spanish-speaking communities, and we hope that you do a big tour like a rock star around Latin America, where they can all meet you. And so take care of yourself, because we want to have you for a long time leading this community. We need you.
I'd love to, and I'm so thrilled that you're in that ATP program and on your way to being a trainer. I didn't know that, so because you're a powerhouse, I can tell.
No.
And I hear there's a lot of powerful people in that training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an awesome group. You should come meet us.
I would love to. I want to, and we have to prepare for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to have an impact on our organization.
Yes, I agree. All right. Well, thank you, Dick.
Thank you.